Welcome to another episode of IBKR podcast. I'm Maria Dieguez, working in the institutional sales team and based in our London office. Our guest today is Xheni Brahaxhija. She's a rates and inflation trader at Marex. Her journey from post-communist Albania to United World Colleges and into financial markets has shaped her views on ambition, access, and opportunity. She's passionate about the role of education, mentorship, and sponsorship in helping more women enter, grow, and succeed in front office careers. Xheni, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hey, Maria. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be part of this conversation and share my perspective.
Mhm. It's not common to find women in trading roles within the financial sector. How did you end up in this role? Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, well, definitely my career was not a straight line. I started at Marex 8 years ago in compliance, so I did not begin in front office. But as an international student at the time, I was very clear on one thing. First, I needed to get in. And I trusted myself that once I was inside the business, I would learn, build relationships, and eventually make it on a trading desk. And I would say that mindset came from much earlier on. So, as you mentioned, I grew up in Albania and a society that was still quite patriarchal. But education was always treated as the great equalizer. So, I would say whether you were a boy or a girl, you were expected to work hard and excel. And then I went into study at the United World Colleges. This was an experience that truly shaped me. And UWC is built around the idea that where you come from should not determine where you end up. Your background is a starting point. It does not have to be your ceiling. And moving on to Marex, I treated every role as a way to move closer to the market. And funny enough, each week I would spend time with a different broking, trading, sales desk. I really wanted to learn how products were priced, what moved them, where risks sat, and how trades flew from one point to the other through the business. And moving in market risk was a turning point. I had a great manager who invested in me, helped me technically, taught me how to navigate the organization and open doors. And by then, trading actually felt like the natural transition. But I would say the route was not as obvious. I remember being in the kitchen and I ran into the head of trading of energy. And he asked me, what's going on? What are you doing with your life? And I was joking. And I said, making my 7 cup of coffee for the day. And he looked at me like completely deadpan and he said, there are 2 trading desks being built. You should look into them. I needed the direction, but I would say direction only matters if you act on it. So I followed up, I put myself forward, and eventually I joined the swaps desk. I was very fortunate that to join the desk during its building phase. So I not only learned about products, pricing, and risk, but also the infrastructure needed to run a desk from front to back. And it showed me that trading is not just what happens on screen. There's an entire ecosystem built behind every trade eventually. And that conversation truly stayed with me because I learned that somebody can actually point you towards a door, but you still have to walk through it. So it's say talent matters, but talent without access and sometimes without direction can actually remain
Mm.
invisible.
And you mentioned that you would sit for an hour with different teams to learn. Were they willing to share that time with you? Weren't they too busy to dedicate time to you? I think it speaks quite highly about the people in your company.
Yeah, that is something I always appreciated about Marriott. People are incredibly approachable and collaborative. At first, coming from compliance, I would get the occasional suspicious look, why is compliance sitting next to me? But once they realized I genuinely was curious about the product and the market, they opened up, they share stories, they explained, how they thought. And if they did not know the answer, they'd always point me towards somebody who did. So yes, they were busy, but I found that people were willing to make time when they saw that the curiosity was genuine and I respected their time. So it speaks, highly of the people, but also of the culture. Knowledge was not treated, or it's still not treated as something to be guarded. People, who are willing to share it with somebody who shows real interest and is prepared to learn. So that experience taught me that access is not always offered formally. Sometimes it can be created by asking a thoughtful question and earning people's trust on the way.
Mm-hmm. And what challenge have you faced, or do you think women commonly face in this type of front office roles?
Well, even when I first started, I would say even today, the first challenge is not, proving that you can do the job, to is getting people to picture you on that seat in the first place. As women do remain underrepresented in trading. So when you get there, you're not only reading the market, you're also reading the room. So I would say this is embedded like since early on, because many women are taught to work hard and trust that their hard work will speak for itself. But your work does not walk into a promotion meeting and speak for you. You have to. So being good is essential, but is not enough. People need to associate your name with judgment, ideas, and commercial value. And I recently come to learn that, visibility is not vanity. It's part of how trust is built. And many talented women out there wait until they feel completely ready before putting themselves forward. And I understand why, because when you are one of the few, the margin of error can feel way smaller. So there, rather than simply telling women to be more confident, we all should ask, who is being developed, who is being backed, who is being allowed to take risks, make mistakes, recover and grow. Because confidence often comes from after somebody has been given the opportunity and not before that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think that the challenge you have described can be overcome?
I would say, there are two levers to this: the self leadership part and the actual leadership responsibility. By self leadership, I mean owning my own development. So make your ambitions visible. Know what your strengths are. Be honest what you need to do in order to learn. And ask for feedback. Put your hand up for stretch assignments, build relationships for before you need something. It also means that you're not waiting until you feel 100% ready. But at the same time, we cannot turn a structural issue into a woman's self-improvement project. This is where leadership comes in, and it matters enormously. Leaders decide who gets visibility, who gets credit, who gets stretched, and who gets sponsored. And that is where I would say culture is created, not through slogans, but through actual decisions. Also, this industry sometimes sells the myth of the self-made trader. I personally do not buy into that. Performance matters, but nobody has built so far careers alone. At some stage, somebody has taught you, trusted you, or given you the opportunity. Careers are shaped by teams, managers, sponsors, and the culture around you. So good cultures do not lower the bar. They make sure that talented people have a fair chance to reach it.
Mm-hmm. And what are the key factors that help women overcome these barriers?
Well, for me, there are four pillars to this: education, mentorship, sponsorship, and community. Education gives you the competence to do your job. Mentorships gives you judgment, and sponsorships gives you access, opens doors. But community is the one that gives you that momentum. And to wrap this up, self leadership activates all four. So in markets, competence is non-negotiable. You need to know your product, you need to know your risk, your macro context, and your technicals. But on a trading desk, who you learn from matters enormously, especially in your early career. Your manager may be your most important teacher, not simply the person who gives you reviews for your performance, right? So you can study curves, pricing risk, and the macro environment, but an experienced trader has more than 20 years of pattern recognition and market intuition. And honestly, no textbook in the world can give you that. They are the ones that know when a move matters, when it makes noise, when to add risk, and when to actually step back, and what the flow or liquidity may be telling them. So I would say a great manager makes that sort of thinking visible. They explain what are they seeing and why. They give you a room to ask questions, take control risk, make mistakes, and learn from them. And they can teach you how to truly think like a trader. So who you sit next to and who invests time in you can shape the trader you actually become. But I would say, do not wait for the perfect mentor to appear. Seek people out inside and outside your organization. Most firms have an internal mentoring program, so use them. External organizations such as Women in Financial Markets are the community that can connect you to different perspectives, experiences, networks. Mentorship does not always begin by asking, will you be my mentor? Start with a conversation, ask a specific question, listen and act on the advice and follow up, how it's going. I would say the strongest mentorship relationships are built over time through curiosity, consistency, and trust. But sponsorship is completely different. A mentor says, here's how I would think about you. Like, here's my rationale behind this thinking. Whereas the sponsor says, put Xheni in the room. Mentorship is seen as guidance, where sponsorship is actual advocacy. And many career defining decisions actually happen when you're not in the room, when leaders are deciding who is ready and who gets the exposure. And then there comes in the community part. Again, this is why I'm such a vocal supporter of Women in Financial Markets. WIFM creates visibility, connection, and access to women at different stages in their careers. So personally, like seeing someone several steps ahead has changed the question from, can somebody like me do this, to how do I get there? And I would say the goal is not to create women who can survive every single barrier alone and break every single glass ceiling. It should be to create environments where talent is developed, is noticed, backed, and trusted. Because giving somebody the seat is not enough. You have to give them access to the whole experience.
So many takeaways from today's conversation, Xheni. I want to try to summarize some of them. I would say that there is no single route into trading, so determination and a strategic career moves matter. Learning beyond your immediate job description can significantly expand career opportunities. Success requires both a strong performance and visibility. The issue is often access and support, not a lack of ambition or confidence. Leadership and culture are essential for career development. Talent thrives when companies intentionally create the conditions for success. Mentors help people grow, sponsors help people advance, and professional networks can accelerate development and create opportunities. Xheni, thank you so much for sharing your experience and perspective as a trader. It's been a thought-provoking and enlightening conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will take away a great deal from your journey and insights.
Thank you, Maria. It's truly, truly been a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of IBKR Podcast, and see you next time.
The analysis in this material is provided for information only and is not and should not be construed as an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy any security. To the extent that this material discusses general market activity, industry, or sector trends, or other broad-based economic or political conditions, it should not be construed as research or investment advice. To the extent that it includes references to specific securities, commodities, currencies, or other instruments, those references do not constitute a recommendation by IBKR to buy, sell, or hold such investments. This material does not and is not intended to take into account the particular financial conditions, investment objectives, or requirements of individual customers. Before acting on this material, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular circumstances, and, as necessary, seek professional advice.